Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Extravagant Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, July 9th. Doing a live stream today. Been off a couple afternoons after and around 4th of July, so back at it for today with live stream, and a good amount of things to go over today. So I'm talking quickly. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going over is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. First thing I always like to go over on these videos is just basically the bigger picture, what the indices did, what some of the bigger moves were, and then we can dig into some of the single named moves, which I think we certainly had some today. And just a very interesting market dynamics going on. I think a lot of people kind of are looking at this market and saying, geez, we've been overbought. We got overbought really towards the end of last week. And it took a little bit of a breather so far in the beginning of this week, but starting to see just either I would say either or. We're seeing either some names get rotated into, or some other leaders are still acting pretty well in this market. And you also have some names that really have kind of pushed up a lot, probably in my opinion, up a little bit too far, are starting to correct a little bit. And all of these things, I think, what I'm trying to the message that I'm trying to give you in this end of day market recap is, overall to kind of be realistic, but to understand that we're in a pretty dynamic bull market right now. So in terms of performance for the day, I thought it was interesting. I'm going to start with some of the boring stuff first. Bonds. They had a 10-year auction today. I thought it was interesting that bonds were up 1%. It doesn't really change the picture in bonds, but again, we seem to have a couple down days in bonds, and then we kind of move back up. So overall, still in a basic sideways range for the day. We were really hot out of the gates today. NVIDIA made a new high today. Like, that was enough to be a story, but obviously we've got a second story too with what happened in the cryptos towards the end of the day too. But NVIDIA made a new high today. I mean, that's impressive. The semis were strong early on. And like I said, a little bit too heated right off the bat. There's maybe some pent-up buying going into the open, and it feels like there was a little bit of profit taking. Now, I just want to go over that really quickly. Does that make sense? Right? Think about what we have coming forward. A week from tomorrow, we have NVIDIA reporting earnings, and then we're going to get some of the big names. Obviously, the banks come a little bit before NVIDIA reports earnings, but typically they don't move the market that much. But some of these names, I think NVIDIA. I'm sorry, did I say NVIDIA? Netflix reports a week from tomorrow. Netflix is up like somewhere around 28 to 30% from its last quarter reporting. So there's been names that have really advanced, and there's some profit taking going on the tape ahead of those earnings reports. Do you think that makes sense? You have to ask yourself, after that type of a move, does it make sense for some of these bigger institutions to probably be taking a little bit off the table at this point, and then watching and seeing what's going to happen in terms of these earnings reports? I leave that question to you, but I certainly have an idea about that. So again, think about what's coming up. Think about what some of the catalysts are going to be going forward. The small caps actually outperformed today. Q's up fine today, up 0.7 of a percentage point. S&P up 0.6 of a percentage point. Microcaps also did well today. The VIX was down 5.3%. And your performers, we started to see the home builders creep back up yesterday, notched another 3.6% gain. So I'm going to go over some of these charts. Before I do that, I just want to take a look at what the indices are doing, so that you could just take a quick look to see what's going there. What did I do here? I got a screen share, stop screen share, and then reshare, and bring up. Now we should have the charts. Okay, so SPY. All right, very nice move. Sorry, I shouldn't say very nice move. Just continuing to grind above the 5-day moving average. We did not take out Friday's high. That's okay in my opinion. By the way, if my charts look a little bit different to you, we did a new release for the MarketWebs, right? And we've got some new bells and whistles. I'm not going to talk about that in today's video, but we just ran a special for this, and you could get in at the basically same price, but you've got more features, more bells and whistles that we've rolled out here. bottom line here is in terms of the price action, right? So we had, as I mentioned, a little bit of digestion in the beginning of this week. Perfectly normal once we get overbought. The RSI, if you look towards the bottom of your screen, got up to a 75. That is really overbought, guys. I don't think that enough people are taking note of that. That, if you look back at the indices, they don't normally stay above 70 RSI for a long time. So to me, and this could change because we know seasonality will change as we progress through July and also get into August. Remember last year, August, there was about a 9% correction in August. So could we have another bit of a dip or correction? Sure. And I would keep that weaker seasonality in mind. For now, we're above the 5-day moving average, and this market remains fairly strong. Again, do I think, I'm just going to reiterate one more time. Do I think we got over the tips of our skis on sorry, not Friday, because Friday was a holiday, but Thursday? Absolutely. But I would say this is a pretty neat, coming in to kind of fill that gap and holding in there. That SPY. Qs came in, and I just want to show you the 1-hour chart because, again, you could kind of get a sense of what's going on here. When you look at the 1-hour chart, like I mentioned, we were hot out of the gate. We came into those last week highs, right, Thursday, where we got overbought, and we came back in and got a little bit of a rejection there. So again, my thought, probably a little bit of profit taking in some things, but we're not as overbought as we were. There's a little bit of an RSI divergence in here, but for now we stay above the 5-day moving average. And then lastly, IWM, which I don't look at in every one of these end of day videos, but this has been moving up quite nicely. You got a VPOC up there about a 0.5% away. So overhead supply coming, where you could see a pause in the small caps. But since they broke out, since they climbed above this 200-day moving average, right, and they got rejected there a couple times, it's been a pretty nice move, and it's nice to see the small caps get involved with this. So let's talk about Bitcoin. How could we not talk about this fresh highs in Bitcoin? So I'm going to talk about that first. I'll bring up futures here. But yeah, that's a nice break higher. We talked about that. I know a lot of people have been talking about the setup in Bitcoin, but I've been one of them too, where we've kind of got to the top of this range a few times and got rejected. But notice what happened here, right? This last time that we got to the top of the range, specifically this bar where we started to move back down, right? We got a real nice move. That was, I think that was towards the end of last week. Right? And then we just saw this little digestion. Once you're holding in there, right? And that's the back test. I even put this on Twitter too. I said, here's the back test. Here's the breakout of the value area, and here's the back test, right? Inside day following, a nice move higher, and that's a new closing high here. So let's see if it can be maintained. Again, your support is 10, what is this? 108,505. Yeah, 108,505. If you want to look at this in terms of the Bitcoin ETF, too, that's a little bit of a clearer picture there too. Very nice. And then look at this guy coming into play. Right, here's Ethereum, which has really kind of perked up. Notice where we are again. We're pressing into the bottom of the value area, and I'm just going to bring up the weekly chart for you here. We've had several rejections right around this area. Keep in mind, we have 2 more days to go. When you're looking at a weekly chart like this, you have to keep in mind that you won't see the closing, how the bar is going to look until you get to the end of the week, which is Friday. So we have 2 more days, but let's see if Ethereum can hold in here. I did get long one of the ETFs. But here's where we are, kind of the scene of the crime. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times we've kind of come across this level. And then by the end of the week, price went back below 25.94. That's the level to watch there. And Ethereum, again, this is futures, so just it's not the actual crypto, but there you go. And again, you could see this, right, more so on the daily chart where these individual spikes have happened, where by the end of the week we just don't close there. So that's this could be, I don't want to say exciting because it'll be more important once we get to the end of the week, but we've got a potential break higher in Ethereum. I traded ETH. I'm using ETHA. And basically what I'm going to be using here is the top of the value area for the month. I'm just going to this is another one of the features, by the way, is looking at multiple, multiple different time frames of value areas on the same screen. So you don't have to toggle back and forth. But here's just the break of this month's value area, the July value area, right? We'll go back and you can see that the value area for the year is this bigger. We also put you could see the volume associated with this too. Some people like to see that. That's fine if they have that. That's one of the new bells and whistles that we added. So very impressive. Let's just go through a couple of these crypto charts. I'm going to start with one that's been acting really well. Coinbase, nice check back here in Coinbase, got to the top of the value area. So there's your check back and there's your break higher. And now we're challenging the highs from about 2 weeks ago. Very impressive for Coinbase. A few other ones in this space. MSTR also perking up. I know this hasn't been the one to really play as of late, but it looks like it's gearing up here a bit. Let's see if it can take out these highs. Again, you've had to be patient with some of these things. It's tough to be patient when there's so many different movers out there, but basically to me, that's what's been really important, very impressive. Just want to look at one other chart here too. Mara also got above recent highs too, back above this VPOC. Also saw end of day call buying. All these things saw call buying towards the end of the day. Coinbase, MSTR, Mara as well. That's why I'm bringing them to your attention, as well as IBIT saw some option flow as well. Let me get a little bit away from this group and let me talk about the semiconductors. NVIDIA with the first one. And again, here you go. This is new all-time highs for NVIDIA. Is it a little bit extended here? Absolutely, but trending, right? And very impressive. A few other names too that I wanted to go over in the semi space. CRDO has been also acting really well. That's a new all-time high in CRDO. Very impressive. Another one that people seem focused on, and I actually took a little bit of a position in this one, in this ALAB, because I'm not going to let it go without me. It's a nice setup here. You just have to be wary that every time it's gotten to the top of this range, it's failed. And to me, that's frustrating. You don't know if there's a seller that's standing there, if something's not right with the company, or if you just had to be patient. I don't have the answer to those questions. Probably there was a seller that was standing there for a little bit, the way that this was getting rejected. You don't know if that seller's done as we're approaching the same area. For now, I'm giving it a shot and we'll see if this thing could begin to kind of push out of this range, right? We don't have we don't have a crystal ball. We just have setups where we know we're going to get long and where we know we're going to possibly take the trade off, right? If it doesn't work. For me, it's going to be right around these two moving averages. I won't let it go all the way down to the bottom of value because I think that's too far for a stop, but that's just me. All right, that's ALAB. What else did I wanted to go over in this space? Maybe just AMD as well. AMD kind of caught between two different areas right now. That's the bottom of the value area for the year, and it is above the value area for the month. So it has to break into this like 140-ish level for a continued move, but not the strongest semiconductor out there. One other one I was just going to keep an eye on too. Broadcom, which also looks pretty darn healthy too. Again, not as fast as some of the other names in the space, but it's certainly looking pretty good right now. So the semis, cryptos, both of these things, at or near, all-time highs. I can't argue with that, right? I could try to come up with reasons why I could get, more negative, or we can kind of get not as bullish, but it's really hard to when you've got the cryptos and the semiconductors breaking out to new highs. All right, so that's a couple names there. Just wanted to point out a few other things that I thought were interesting. RBRK, which is one of our weekend watch list names, also trying to turn the corner here. Looks pretty good. Spent some time digesting around the 50-day moving average. I like when the 50-day moving average catch up with price and then price begins to ascend higher. Not bad. Let's talk about a couple of the names in real estate. BLDR, this was a name from our midday note yesterday. Posted this as a trade idea. It got to this VPOC, and I wouldn't call that a rejection. It just kind of hung in here a little bit. Marked a short-term little top for a few days, and now is powering above. Next one up there is 141.38. It's a nice retracement that's going on in Builder. I really like the move here in Zillow. Nice extension away from the 200-day moving average. You got a VPOC again marking overhead supply 77.68 in this one. All right. What else did I want to cover? Oh, just a couple other notes here too. Boeing. Really nice move. That's a break higher in Boeing. I was in this one for a couple weeks, and I just kind of lost my patience in this one. I was in it here. I added in here, and then once I got it to be a nice little profitable trade, I decided to ditch it. I thought it was also a nice day for the Great Eight or the Magnificent Seven names. They all seem to be, well, not all of them, but a couple of them seem to be, after some digestion, turning back higher. Here's Meta. Microsoft got an upgrade today. That also made a new high today. And then also Netflix, which I mentioned, reported that is going to report next week. Also notice it's coming into the 20-day moving average. This has been a nice place previously. One other thing I was going to mention, I said that some names are kind of cooling a little bit. This SEZL has been up in a straight line. There's going to be some profit takers along the way. When you move from earnings on the earnings gap from $60 to 180, if you don't think that there's going to be any profit taking, does this mean that the run in growth stocks is completely over? No, I mean, I think I think that you've got to use a little bit of common sense here and say at some point there's going to be some profit taking. Dave is another one. Dave is one from 120 to 270. Please be reasonable, folks. Don't get so down just because one of these names is seeing profit taking after a humongous move. Please be reasonable, folks, right? And understand that after names have had these types of moves, there's going to be some profit taking from the people who got long in here, especially when these names are going to all report earnings in a couple weeks. So please be reasonable. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Again, things could change rapidly. I don't want to be all bulled up here. I want to make sure that, understanding that this market has had one hell of a run to it. But if there's still things that are setting up and showing fresh breakouts, it's really tough to get completely defensive right now. I've taken off a couple positions and kind of gotten myself to where I want to be, and then added a couple positions and a couple new things to participate in some of the names that are freshly breaking out. Have a great night, guys. See you tomorrow.